Hello, everybody. This is Paul Marchand for Modern Testing Services. I'd like to thank you for joining the RH training presentation on EU furniture. This will be an introduction on beds and storage furniture, and then a follow-up with analytical testing. Scope of the items covered will be beds and storage furniture, including benches and trunks that have storage space within them. Testing we'll be reviewing will be the general safety, mechanical safety, also hazardous substances as with lead and other chemicals. And then flammability, we'll have a brief flammability review here, and we'll be following up later this week with a full flammability review. General safety for beds, we have BSEN 1725. This will be for domestic furniture, covers beds and mattresses, safety requirements, and test methods. Storage furniture, including trunks, benches, will be BSEN 14749. This also covers domestic and kitchen storage units, kitchen worktops, covering safety requirements and test methods. All components or parts of the bed, which the user may come into contact with during normal use, will have to be tested. They'll have to verify there are no burrs or sharp edges, nor any open-ended tubes where anyone could get a finger caught in there. When the bed is fully open and ready for use, all accessible mechanisms that facilitate the frame movement shall have safety distances between any two elements. We have the notes listed out here on the distance, which we would measure through testing. And then wherever there is a specific danger of feet being trapped by a moving part, there should also be a safety distance here of 3.94 inches from the floor. Stability testing for beds as well as storage items. You can see here in the chair, we'd have them set up and we would be pulling from the front as well as from the back. And there's some weight that is left in here so that I can simulate if a person is on it. We're using a chair here just for descriptive to make it easier to put into the image so that you can see how the rigs would be set up. In reality, as you can see the diagrams below, you can see how the bed would be pulled or pushed from different sides, and we have some blocks set off. Static loads will be applied here as well, which would help us cover durability to make sure getting on and off the bed over time will not break it. You can see in the video here, there's a weight being pressed down on the item onto the frame, and we've got a mattress there, so it simulates a person actually getting on and off. Strength and durability, the vertical static load test from the edge of the bed and durability of the bed edges. You'll see the two tests here. The first video, pressing down on the edge. And then the second one, rather than just the small points that are on the edge of the bed, this one simulates more of a person sitting down, and you can see the pressure going down. It's covered by a much larger area as opposed to just the points directly on the frame. Vertical impact test, you can see here, the item will come down, similar to the other tests where it's going to be pressing down on the item and pushing side to side. Bed stability, strength, and durability continued. Some basic test parameters for EN 1725. All the different tests here, we have the parameters for the sizes, the force cycles, drop heights for the vertical impact test, durability of bed edge. You can see the number of cycles that are normally going to be done and what forces would be used for all the additional static load testing for each of these. Our labs would be available for any questions as you're going through and when you're doing some actual testing if you needed to review any of these as well. General safety and structural safety and stability will be covered in the next few slides. Any items where the user can come into contact during normal use, again, will have no burrs or sharp edges, nor any open-ended tubes. This is really just make sure anybody using and working with these will not get cut or break any fingers or anything. Safety distances, again, will be involved here as with storage covers and such, and any movement. You got 3.315 inches. or 0.984 inches. Any item that's moving vertical will also have the safety height testing. Where moving vertically shall be at least 3.94 inches from the floor. Lids, the hinge lids of storage units, could be a bench, anything that's open where you're going to be able to put items in. We'll also have testing diameters here where there are 39.4 inches or less from the floor in different weights as well, where we can make sure that the lid support is going to be strong enough to ensure that there won't be a sudden collapse, the lid won't break, drop down and cause any breaking of fingers or arms. And we'll go through the full position on these to make sure that the arcs are done properly. Vertical moving roll fronts and moving sliding doors should all be constructed from hinge components and shall not move by themselves from any position higher than 7.87 inches. Then extension elements, any there where there is a total mass exceeding 10 kilograms or 22 pounds, but where safety tests are not required, shall have effective open stops. So they should resist being pulled open, basically for a safety perspective, and they want to make sure that it isn't going to open, close, and cause any problems with people or injuries. Storage furniture, structural safety. For the total mass, the mass of the component or unit plus the mass determined according to the following table. So we review this to determine what weights and what testing should be done. So except for kitchen worktops or other surfaces, floor standing units intended to be attached to the building, vertical components. Structural safety only applies to the following component. And then the height for the center of gravity would be considered. And then height to the center of gravity of the component also is going to be checked. And you can see the components here, and you can see the load that would be applied in the lab. So depending on your item would be what we will apply to this and test for. Here you can see some shelf retention, both vertical and downward, for the vertical downward as well as horizontal testing. And you can see we have a test unit being pressed down and also being pushed in, just trying to make sure that the unit internally is not going to break or pull apart easily. And then the deflection of shelves and shelf supports. You can see here we have some bars put in. So they're going to be making sure that if you apply a load in certain directions, that it's not deforming or breaking in any way. Here we have testing done for the pivoted doors. It'd be both applying outward force, inward force, and up and down to make sure that the doors are not going to pop out of any grooves that they have or that they're going to break off from any hinges. They want to make sure everything is sufficient for the weights being used. If any extension elements are added for opening and closing so that they will not slam shut or open too far, we will open to those limits, and then we would strength test the extension so that you can see here we're applying weight to it as the drawer is being pushed down, just to make sure that there's not going to be any breakage or causing any tipping as well. Bottom hinge flap and top hinge flap, you can see here, they'll be opened, and then we're going to be checking for distances, also applying weights, just again to make sure that any hinges or any flaps that are involved are going to be able to maintain and be used throughout without any breakage. Here we're showing some static load testing depending on what's going to be placed on top. And here you just want to make sure that the drawers are going to be able to be opened, number one, without anything getting pinched, and also want to make sure that there won't be any deformation or cracking of the unit from the top. Structural safety continued. Any movable components as well as shelf supports, again, are all going to be checked. Now, if the item is a wall hanging unit as well, we'll be applying forces from the bottom, from the top, from the side. Want to make sure that, however, any of the components that are included to attach the item are sufficient and that they are going to be able to hold items that are placed there. Glass components and floor standing units intended to be attached to the building will also be checked. Again, we're going to be making sure that however they are attached to the walls, that they are going to be there structurally sound and there's not going to be any issues with it. And we could be doing some pressing on these items as well. These are a list of some of the test parameters. So depending on the item, as we just reviewed through the past slides, these will be the specific loads that are being applied. So depending on your item, you could check through here and this will show what's going to be done. You can see, for example, a slam open of extension elements, 10 cycles will be applied. The extension of elements, another 10 cycles. So generally it'd be 10 cycles for most, and then depending on where the item is, the weight will flex depending on here. Storage furniture, the stability. We will be going through potential energy, work through the multiplication of the mass standard so that they can determine what will need to be doing the testing from what heights. Stability requirements will only apply to freestanding storage units with a height to the top of the unit 23.6 inches above floor level, and wall hanging units and top hanging units. Here you see again, doors, extension elements, flaps closed, all storage units unloaded, and will be opened. Different ways of just showing you how we'll have them open. We'll be applying forces down, we'll be opening, and also when they are opened, making sure that there's no tipping or any issues there. And here again, we have the areas unloaded with overturning loads. They'll be applying loads on these, again, making sure one of the arms going to, the shelves or the door is going to open. Will they break away, or will the weight cause the unit to pull away from the wall? Or if it's freestanding, will it cause it to tip over? And again, now this one, same items, but they are now loaded. And you're checking for the anti-tip device, as well as if it's freestanding, you want to make sure with it loaded, if you open a door, that there's not going to be any tipping issues or no breaking issues. These are a list of the weights that would be involved. So depending on your specific item, you could review through here and determine all the parameters that would be applied in the lab. Again, if you have any questions, the labs can always help. If you have any questions now, you could also click the Q&A button and include those questions, and our team will answer at the conclusion of the presentation. Going through a couple of the hazardous substances, this is just a general overview. We'll have a more in detailed review at the end. We would go through restricted substance lists between REACH, POPS, substances of very high concern, and the packaging directive as well. Just a general flammability review. Full flammability will be done in the second presentation later this week. So we will be going over the UK Furniture and Furnishings fire safety regulations, and then assessing ignitability of mattresses and upholstered bed bases using a smoldering cigarette. And then again, also doing it only this time with a match flame equivalent for the ignition source. Just a quick note on some recalls. There have been some issues with headboards catching on fire. So where this one did go through, it did not meet the national standard of BS 5852, and there was a recall for this. Additional recalls, some items were tipping over, causing injury. The hinge guides on one item and the screws did not have enough support so that the cupboards were falling down. And then there was an issue with the mat with a mirror, where the mirror was falling and breaking. No injuries were found, but it does pose that risk. So there was a recall for that item. Now we're going to go through a review on the analytical requirements in a little more detail. Again, any questions, you can feel free to please, on the QA button, you can include your questions now and the team will answer at the conclusion. You'll also see some emails at the end of the presentation where you could send notes, and we'll follow up at a later day with you within the next few days and can respond directly. So going through, we'll have the packaging directive, REACH, both Annex and regulation SVHC and POPs regulation, as well as ROS directive. Heavy metals will be reviewed. You can see here it should be less than 100 ppm. This is cadmium, lead, mercury, hexavalent, chromium. And then for REACH, we've also got the cadmium, lead, nickel all listed out. So depending on the part of your item, whether it's a coating or it's a surface coating, or if it's an actual article or handle, each item is going to have different requirements, and you'll be able to find them through these slides. Continuing on, you see a note, chromium 6, that's a leather component, with the leathers coming into contact with skin. The extractable heavy metals, restricted substance list, this will fall under REACH. And you can see this can cover textile component under normal and reasonably foreseeable use when it's coming into contact with human skin. Organotin compounds, phthalates, all also going to be checked. Surface coatings, plasticized materials for phthalates, especially in toys and childcare items where the children can get them into their mouths. An additional portion with phthalates falling under REACH. Again, plasticized material also accessible and inaccessible. Flame retardants will be checked. You can see the items listed here. So any of the textile materials, upholstery fabric, foams, all will need to be checked for flame retardants. And the limits are listed here that we'll be testing for. Continued with the flame retardants, again with the textile materials, and then an organic solvent with the polyurethane, artificial leather, or synthetic fibers. Additional chemicals that'll be checked under REACH. We'll go through each. So depending on your item, could be textile, could be a plastic material, and if they're accessible for these items, we would be checking them. And now formaldehyde, additional chemicals under REACH again. All items will be checked, textiles and leather items, all with accessible components, all in contact with human skin. PFOA and the salts and related substances, these are also under REACH, under synthetic fibers with water stain repellency and repellent finish coating. So any items that are going to have those claims will be checked here. You can see the limits that are listed, and the lab will go through and determine for you. Additional REACH chemicals, aromatic amines. These will be under textiles and leather materials that will come into direct or prolonged contact with the skin. Dispersed dyes will also be checked. And these will be for textile components under normal or reasonable foreseeable conditions of use coming into contact with human skin. And the limit would be 50 milligram per kilogram here. Additional REACH chemicals that will be checked. The item with oils are prohibited. These would be under wood products and wood components. So we would have these tested. If you have any certificates that do show that you don't have any of these items, you can also share those with the team, and that may help to minimize any of the testing. And substances of very high concern. It's going to be all articles, again, falling under REACH, and they shouldn't have a certain concentration as shown here. Additional items falling under POPs regulation, be the flame retardants. Several will be checked. Again, it's upholstery fabric, foam, and any other material with flame retardant chemicals, accessible as well as inaccessible, to ensure if there are any issues, they'll be able to see if these chemicals are involved. Continuing on with the POPs regulation, fabric, leather, plastic coatings, synthetic fibers, again with the stain repellency and repellent finishes, these items will be checked. The limits are shown here. And if you have any questions, you can also check with the lab if you want to pre-test anything on these items. Pesticides are all prohibited and will apply to textile and leather articles, as well as any other parts, natural materials only. And you have a full list that'll go through. These will be under the restricted substance list for POPs as well. Continuing on with ROS, the heavy metals, flame retardants, and phthalates will all be checked. These could fall under articles or any parts of an electrical or electronic equipment for heavy metals. Same for flame retardants and the phthalates. This concludes our presentation. Again, the Q&A button, you can submit any questions now, and our team is standing by to help with any answers that they can provide now. Also, feel free to send emails to myself and to Sean Zhang, and we can follow up with our team, and we'd get back within the next few days with any questions. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great day and evening.